Hey, how's it going? Welcome to the best fireside chat you'll ever experience in your lives. I have no idea what a vision for universal interoperability mean, but we're gonna figure this out.
We're going to figure it out.
Together. Okay, I see some familiar faces here. I know that this is not a popular time. Appreciate you being here. My name is Tomer. I'm Chief Product Officer at the Stellar Development Foundation, and Stellar has been built for interoperability from the ground up. In the old days, it was mostly around traditional finance and those systems. And in recent years, we're seeing a lot more cross-chain interoperability opportunities. And so I'm really happy to have LayerZero in the house, which is a very prominent player in the world of cross-chain interop. Simon, maybe you can tell us a bit about yourself, LayerZero, and if there's anything else you want to share with the world, now is the time.
Amazing. Yeah. Thank you, Tamer. And thanks everyone for being here. So my name is Simon Baksys. As mentioned, I lead the global business at LayerZero. Been there for about a couple of years. Previous to that, I spent about 7 years at Google, where I led the crypto efforts there. And on the heels of a partnership between Google and LayerZero, I ended up going to the dark side. But LayerZero, for those that don't know, is the market-leading interoperability provider for cross-chain. It is not a bridge. It is an infrastructure messaging protocol, which I'm sure we'll talk about and why that matters. And when I say market leading, I mean it. We account for roughly 82% of all cross-chain messaging volume in the industry, between private chains, public chains, permissionless, etc. And via our rails, one of the biggest use cases for that is value transfer. You can do a lot of different things with messaging. Value transfer is the biggest one. And we are just creeping up on about $10 billion a month in cross-chain volume across some of the biggest assets that we power in the world, be that stable coins like PYUSD, Tether, USDG, assets like WBTC, Athena, and a plethora of others. And we do that across 142 chains today. And I am incredibly excited to call Stellar the 143rd chain that we connect it to the entire ecosystem that is LayerZero across EVMs, non-EVMs, etc., and provide, universal interoperability and bring so much goodness to this amazing ecosystem. So, really, really pumped for that.
LayerZero coming to Stellar. Respect. Okay, you're the chosen ones who heard it first. Awesome. So, we're going to talk about the Stellar integration later, but I'm really curious. You mentioned immediately, LayerZero as an infrastructure for like message passing. The world of cross-chain interop has become fairly complex, right? So we have, message passing protocols, we have asset transfer bridges, we have wrapped assets. Now we also have intent bridges, which are becoming extremely popular. Can you give us like a brief overview on what's your positioning in this world?
Yeah, 100%. And maybe just one thing that I realized, 143rd doesn't mean it's by no means a ranking, right? There's 132 chains that came before that were EVMs that were much, much easier, right? And I always say, like, an EVM chain at this point, we've perfected that process so much that we can integrate in the matter of hours.
Simon, I'm sensing excuses for delayed integration.
Certainly not excuses.
So please,
I think the feat is more so what we're talking about here in terms of integrating, a different ecosystem, completely rewriting everything to match with Solidity, with Rust, with Move, etc. Like across all these different ecosystems, it's a non-trivial task and not a non-trivial integration, which is again why this is so exciting. Like the tech that will come from this and the value that will be driven to the Stellar ecosystem, I think is going to be really, really phenomenal. So just wanted to call that out. In terms of positioning, I think it's really important. Interoperability and like quote unquote bridging has historically been, and we kind of refer to it as like monolithic bridging. It has always been thought about as wrapping of assets, right? And the wrapping of assets has resulted in $600 to $700 million worth of exploits in the past few years. Those were the ones that actually happened. There was also about another $1.5 billion that white hat hackers caught and prevented. But it's a fundamentally difficult problem to solve. And so we call that sort of bridging. Monolithic bridging is the concept of like taking an asset, wrapping it on one end, and then producing a synthetic version of that asset on like Stellar. And like that's fine, and anyone can do that. That's sort of like permissionless interoperability, right? Like you take the pipe and you use that pipe to like bring an asset over. But there are flaws within that model. Security is one. Two is liquidity fragmentation. Three is sort of the non-official version of this asset, which causes market confusion, et cetera, right? So what we've built is this messaging protocol. Everything is simply a message that goes from one chain, from source to destination, across all these different blockchains. And it all goes in a point-to-point system, which is important. So you can go from Solana to Ethereum to Stellar to Arbitrum, whatever that may be. And that message in the context of value transfer becomes about native asset movement. That message is simply a burn instruction and then a mint instruction on the destination side that asset issuers implement with us directly into their smart contract. So that's like the biggest difference in terms of permissionless bridging and native asset movement. So if you think about something like that most people are familiar with, like Circle CCTP, the cross-chain transfer protocol for USDC, most asset issuers in the world have chosen to do that with us. Like we are their CCTP. We are PayPal CCTP. We are Paxos's CCTP for USDG. We are Tether's CCTP. So that means that they own those smart contracts. They integrate those however they want with this messaging layer that then produces the native asset movement. And that's why the things that will be unlocked with this integration is exactly that. It's how do we bring all these assets and applications, the 550 of them that rely on LayerZero today, all into this stellar, no pun intended, ecosystem of, that's been around for so many years and has done such a phenomenal job on both uptime and kind of attracting payments and finance, et cetera. Like it will just completely supercharge that.
Very cool. I think you guys had an announcement recently of a cross-chain swap feature, which also relates to a recent acquisition of Stargate, which relates to a bunch of crypto Twitter drama. I don't know if you guys have been following along, but you made a proposal. Wormhole made a competing proposal, very public, and a lot of speculation around that. But at the end of the day, you guys got it. Congrats. Can you tell us a bit about that integration, the cross-chain swaps, and what it means for the Stellar ecosystem, for example?
Yeah, that was one of the more entertaining things in the past probably 6 to 12 months on crypto Twitter, if anyone was following. DAO acquisitions are fun. That was the biggest one that's ever been done, $110 million, consolidating an entire DAO, buying out the entire token, et cetera. Quite a complicated process. But on the end of that, for us acquiring Stargate and taking this thing in-house is incredibly important. And one of the biggest things coming out from that is just yesterday, to your point, we launched sort of the next iteration of interoperability for us, which is not just cross-chain interoperability, it's cross-asset interoperability. So what we launched yesterday was starting just on 4 chains, but cross-chain swaps. So an ability to take, USDC on Base to USD T0 on Avalanche in a sub-second transaction, right? So you'll see $100,000 filled in half a second, guaranteed, always delivered. And so it's sort of the next value that's being brought to the asset issuer, right? To make that asset essentially as accessible and as useful as possible, and what that means for Stellar in the future once the integration is complete is exactly that, right? Like sub-second, completely gasless, one click, MEV resistant transfers from any asset and any chain into Stellar and any asset on Stellar.
Very exciting stuff. We talk with a lot of asset issuers in the ecosystem and a lot of players in crypto in general. I think one thing that's very unique to LayerZero is everyone loves you guys. Like, I think asset issuers, whenever, we talk about cross-chain and LayerZero comes up, you've definitely done a lot of great work with institutions, especially. So I'm curious, A, how did this happen? B, like, how do we, you have in this audience a lot of people that are working with institutions, and I think getting that type of relationship with your institutional customers is something that people are really interested in. So maybe you can enlighten us.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, that's very kind and amazing to hear. Um, we do work with, again, customers, big and small, financial and degen, kind of across the board, 550 plus different applications to integrate with LayerZero. And that's, I think, largely just thanks to our amazing team, right? We're about 150 people strong across the globe. But one thing that I think is core to the DNA of LayerZero is we practice the concept of unreasonable hospitality. If anyone's read that book, if you haven't, you absolutely should. But it talks about spending 95% of your time as a business, as a company, on execution, right, and really kind of delivering that effort, and spending 5% of that time on foolish hospitality, like going the absolute extra mile for a particular customer, for a particular instance, et cetera. And we practice that as a company very much so, particularly as it relates to our partners and customers, and hopefully the entire Stellar ecosystem, right? Like, what is that 5% that we just always do more than anyone else ever would? And hopefully that's kind of what results in having good partnerships and relationships and in the ecosystem.
Okay, so let's continue talking about the Stellar integration. We're very excited about this thing. Like you mentioned, this is not an easy integration or not a simple integration. Lots of moving pieces. Stellar is very unique in the best possible way. And so, how did you guys decide to go to this specific integration and invest in the Stellar ecosystem? Why?
Yeah, I think there's a variety of reasons. Number one, I think it goes back to what I mentioned, which is it's a phenomenal, long-standing ecosystem that has like stood the test of time of crypto, and has went through many cycles in this industry, right? And look at you guys here in Rio putting on a phenomenal event. I think two, it has certainly I think attracted a certain part of the ecosystem that is more payments focused, that is more financial services and institutional focused. I think we were talking about this in the green room before, but similarly how a lot of people bring up LayerZero as almost like a prerequisite or as a thing that you need. I think we've started noticing also more and more from our customers, like PayPal, for example, expanding to Stellar, or things like Ondo that were announced today, or things like Centrifuge, which also announced, kind of go into Stellar, powered by LayerZero in the future, et cetera. So it's a combination of an amazing ecosystem that exists, the types of customers that started, building and developing on Stellar that are also our customers. And then I think going back to the team aspect and the people aspect, I think that's incredibly important, right? So if you look at yourself or Danelle or Ada and Jose and Raja, like all amazing people. And I'm a firm believer that if you work with amazing people, amazing things will happen. And so I think that combination is brought us here.
That's a lot of flattery. We have a lot of builders here in the room, whether they're asset issuers, wallets, applications, DeFi applications. How do they prepare for the LayerZero integration? What can they start doing right now to make sure that when LayerZero launches, they're ready to go?
Yeah, I think, first of all, we started the conversation with saying, right, that the concept of interop and assets, et cetera, is incredibly complicated and convoluted. So there's an aspect of education that I think needs to happen, or learning, right? So for those that want to build and want to think about if they're in a different ecosystem today but want to come to Stellar, or if they want to, if they're on Stellar today but let's say want to attract liquidity from a Solana or et cetera, there's a learning curve there that I think is important to spend time on. There's also, a preparation curve. Like a lot of, I think folks, especially in crypto, like everyone ships and moves so fast, so everything tends to be last minute. We have a little bit of time until the integration is live. So I think, preparing for that, and we can certainly help, right? So the builders that are planning to do that, our doors are open, and we'd be happy to help prepare for that. But yeah, I think it's preparation and learning, because like there is a lot there to unpack. Like it seems sort of simple. It's interoperability, it's messaging, great. Like we have this like pipe that we can use, but there's also so many things that come with it, and there's a lot of value to be extracted there.
Amazing. We're at time. We're almost at time. In the waiting room, you mentioned that there's one thing that I'm not allowed to ask, which is about timelines. And so, in one word, ETA.
Soon.
Ladies and gentlemen, LayerZero is coming to Stellar. Thank you so much, Simon. Appreciate you.
Thank you.